started as people trickle in. Thank you. Well, that was very nice. That was easy. They're very good students. Thank you all for coming and welcome. I really appreciate seeing you all here. We've had a couple of programs for sophomore parents this year around different issues, so I was starting to worry that no one would come to this one because they know it all already, but I guess not. There's a few more things to tell you. Today what we're going to do is talk about the plans for your children as they quickly move towards the last half of their high school careers. So, I don't know if that makes you want to cry or jump for joy, but it's certainly a time of mixed emotions. You're going to feel everything from not wanting to rush through and having them grow up and leave to knowing you need to move forward and you need the concrete steps for getting this done. And this is why we start in sophomore year. It's developmentally, they're becoming ready. Some are more ready than others at this point. But it's soon enough for you to start to organize and make a plan for the next couple of years. So when starting to get this done step by step, in the end, when they're applying to college, at least you feel somewhat knowledgeable about how this is all going to work. So this is the point of this today, is to continue to have you plan your steps for next year, and so that they're ready to really start applying come September of their senior year. Of course, we're working with your students throughout this, but this is to sort of have you be clued in as to all those steps as well. You're going to hear over and over again that we want this to be your child's journey, that they're the ones to take charge of this process, but we also know how much that works all the time. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But we really do want you to continue to think in terms of this being your child's journey and them taking charge of this process as we move forward through it. That it is ultimately their decision where they go to school. As much as you're paying for it and helping with it, we want it to be their choice where they're going to feel most comfortable in the end, in that final round of choices. So today you'll hear about the steps that we've taken this year and what will fall into place over the next year. Since most of our students are going to be going on to college, how many of our students go on to four-year colleges? That's going to be our focus today. Of course, it's not the direction for everyone, and there are many options, but that is something we can discuss with you as a family or just at a later time. So, how many people have been through this process already? How many have been through this process twice already? More times than that? Okay, well bless you, that's terrific. Those of you who have been through it a couple times, maybe you should be up here too. And you probably know better than anyone that although there are timelines and guides for finding and applying to college, for every child it's a little bit different. Each has their own timetable. Developmentally, they're ready at different times. As counselors, we've experienced it all. So and for us, what we see is on one end of the spectrum, we'll see the freshmen who come in first day of school and want to talk about college. And we see those same ones will probably have the detailed spreadsheets and applications finished before school even starts in their senior year. On the other side, we have the students we need to chase down, meet with every week, give them one step at a time to complete as they move to the next step. And you will also see that almost every one of them will change their mind 10, 15 times as they go through this process. What they think they want to do now will change as they start to see schools and start to hear where other people are looking at, as they start to get the advice from everyone. So just be ready for all of that. And also, we just don't want you to feel out of step, like you're behind, or your neighbors are doing this and I'm not doing that. So there's no one right way to go through this process. You can trust that it will get done in the end. We're approaching the end of the year, and I think every one of our seniors has a plan. Not every one of them is planning to go to college, most are, but we do have a set plan as to where they're going to go. So over the next 2 years, you can see that this is a process, and you're going to go on this great adventure with your child. Sometimes it's going to feel like a roller coaster as you go on this ride. but you will start to see your children start to switch gears, become more thoughtful about who they are, what fits best for them, where they want to go next. It's also a time when everyone will offer advice and have an opinion of what is best for your child. And you'll need to learn to block out most of it. Create your own plan, follow what works best for you. As your child's counselor, we're a great resource. We work together as a team, all of us, and we're well versed on the latest trends in admissions. Sue Carroll in the College and Career Center, I don't know if she made it down here, is also she has a wealth of information and has so much to offer in this process. So whether it's which test you're going to take, which college you're going to look at, again, remember that everybody's path is different. I think the best single piece of advice that I can give at this stage is to always keep in mind who your children are, who they are, where they fit best. You're going to hear us say that about the fit a lot. And try not to worry about where everyone else is going and what's the most well-known school your child can get into. So this morning, I'm going to introduce my colleagues here. And we're down by a couple of counselors. Some sickness in our office there. But we're going to start with Lori, who'll talk about how we began this year in engaging, not right. I forgot to tell you what I'm doing here. Child and reflect. She's going to talk about the children reflecting on their strengths, how to make the connections to their future plans. Nick will then walk us through the junior year and what that will look like and the additional programs we've lined up. He'll also he'll describe some of the testing options that are so many for all of you for next year. Jane will talk about how to organize and plan for college visits, and Linda will wrap it up with thoughts about what you can do as a parent. And we've given Anne the day off today. She's going to answer questions for us. But we would like to save all the questions for the end if possible, and we'll take a lot of time for that, and this piece of it will be a little bit shorter. So, all right, Lori, now you can go.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Cindy. I would like to bring you all up to speed about where we are with your children's class. The school counseling department just met with all of your children to discuss to start to plan and think for life after high school. Our goal was to try to get the students more engaged about thinking and reflecting on post-secondary options, thinking about who they are and what does this mean in terms of their future goals. This month we met with your children on 2 occasions, and we started to talk to them about beginning to understand their personal characteristics and how this may relate to future career goals and also possible majors. We started off with a self-reflection to help them gain an understanding of themselves is really the point at which is essential to begin the solid research about planning for life after high school. We get the students thinking about asking themselves, who am I? What am I interested in? And what am I interested in doing in the future? We got them reconnected with Naviance. For those of you who may not be familiar with Naviance, it's a web-based school counseling resource program that are used by many high schools across the nation, and it supports career and college planning. It's secure and private, and it's linked only to our department. The only people who could view it is ourselves and your child. We've been using the site for about 11 years, and our students and parents love it. We hear fabulous reviews about the program. And we're going to be utilizing the Naviance program all throughout next year and throughout your child's senior year. I would like to highlight the features on Naviance that we shared with your child, and hopefully maybe a few of them went home and talked to you about it. Probably not, but that's okay. This is very thought-provoking. And it's a really useful tool as you start to discuss about planning for the year ahead. And don't worry, I'm going to fill you in with what we did. Now, the first session when we met with your child, we got them connected to Naviance, and they completed Do What You Are, which is a personality assessment and a career interest inventory. And this program is based on the adolescent version of the Myers-Briggs personality theory. In completing the Do What You Are, each student were given a personality type. You can see here's our example student up on the board. I gave them a description who they are, as well as their strengths and information to their blind spots. This connected them to further think about the college satisfiers and career satisfiers, so to get them thinking about what type of environment they want to be on a college campus. Our sample student is an extrovert, so they're going to like to be around a lot of creative, energized people with a lot of clubs and activities, so that's something that your son or daughter maybe want to look at. In addition, this is a fabulous resource as well. It links them with potential careers that they may be interested or enjoy doing it, and this links them into potential majors to get them to the career of their choice. It is a wonderful, wonderful tool to review with your child. It gives them personal information, insights to their strengths, and it's so helpful with planning for life after high school. We hope that maybe this will start a conversation between you and your child, and just get them thinking and discussing about their strengths, interests, and goals, and everything is all at their fingertips with this Naviance program. We also dove deeper into Naviance, and we showed them how to explore a lot of the really fantastic features on Naviance. We showed them how to do a college search. Oh, in addition here with the research, they learned about, in terms of the careers, they could see what knowledge and skills are needed for the careers that they're interested, and what tasks are involved with that career. In addition to a link that the students also really like is the average wages by state, which is really fun for them to explore the differences of the states in our country. They also learned about the various majors to relate, and if they click on any of those field of studies of majors, a whole list of all colleges that offer that particular major comes up. And we showed them all of these features. And this Naviance program also really helps the students take this into a deeper level of understanding their interests. Because as we all know, research shows if students are happy in their career, it needs to match their personality to have that secure fit. In addition, we showed them a lot of ways of researching colleges and how to get really specific, detailed information about colleges that they're interested in. We also showed them how to do a college search, and that's where they could break down to so many variables. They could put in demographics, location, size, if they're interested in a particular major or playing a sport. And this generates a potential list of schools to get them started in researching, and if they're ready to do that. But we just wanted to give them the tools. We also showed them how to access the websites, college-specific websites right through Naviance, to show them just the vast amount of information that's out there online. In addition, another popular feature is the graph, otherwise known as the scattergrams, which shows New Canaan High School's data and admissions results for all the schools of our New Canaan High School students. So that's where students could get New Canaan data on all the schools where students applied and if they got accepted or rejected based on their academic weighted GPA and their SAT scores out of the 1600 format, which is just a critical reading and math. So it's really nice to get them thinking. It is such a phenomenal research tool, and this 2-session program that we did with the students, it was so exciting to see them engaged. They were curious, they were interested, because the two-part program, it's all about them and to get them thinking about the future. And we also encourage them to make appointments with their counselors if they have any questions to start to talk about this. Now, you may be wondering, this tool sounds fantastic, but how do you all have access to it? How can I get connected? Let's see. You could go right onto the Naviance website, which is right there. Another really simple way of getting into is right on our New Canaan High School website. On the left-hand side, you'll see a link for Naviance, and that'll bring you up to your child's login, and also a guest password. The guest password is grams, fans, plural. And that's a really nice way of you accessing just the general information. But we also really want to encourage you all to partner up with your child. Ask your son or daughter to let's sit down together, let's review what you found during the sophomore program, and also working towards each year, setting some appointments to review and to really partner with your son or daughter. And as you know, Naviance is an excellent research tool with a ton of information, and I hope that this is a little bit thought-provoking for you folks to start the conversation. And now I'd like to turn it over to Nick. As I gave you an overview of this year, Nick is going to discuss about what next year is going to look like.
Great, thank you, Lori. So, good morning, I'm Nick Willett. Actually, I think I'm right there. But I'm Nick Willett, and I'm here to talk about your students' junior year and the college testing and the timeline, all right? I actually also happen to be the only guy in counseling, so if you're talking to a guy, that's me. So how many of you guys had testing anxiety? Yeah? So, okay, well, I'm about to give you some more healthy testing anxiety for you guys, all right? First of all, let's all take a deep breath, okay, because you're not in this alone, okay? We all here are here to help you through this process. And we're here to help you plan properly for the tests that are coming up for your students' junior years. There's also, just so you're aware, there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of that information can get very confusing and so forth. But I want to reiterate the fact you're not in this alone. You can call us, and we'll help you through that whole process of getting through it. Now, when it comes to testing for next year, it's a good idea to have a plan, and to have a plan early, all right? And basically, you want to have a plan that addresses which tests you're going to take, when to take them, and how to prepare for them, okay? You also need to remember that each student, each child is going to be at different places, okay, with the testing. So please don't compare your kids with other kids, because remember, everyone has their own path that they're walking along to get to college, okay? So it's just important to make sure that you understand that, because if you start thinking about that, you're going to panic, and your student's going to start to panic over that, okay? So, all right, let's talk about the timeline. I'm sure most of you know about most of the tests, but I am going to go through the tests just so you're more aware of them. And I realize some of you already have kids at college, so you've gone through this a second, a third time, and just bear with me, because I'm sure there's some parents in here that have never gone through this process and don't understand all the tests that are coming up. So when your students return this fall, they're going to be taking what's called the PSAT, which is basically a preliminary test before they actually go and take the SATs. And we will kick this all off in the fall on October 14th, which is a Wednesday. All right? So we encourage all juniors to take the PSAT. Okay? I'm going to say that again. We encourage all of your students to take this test. There is absolutely no preparation needed for the PSAT. That's why they call it the preliminary test. It's a practice test, okay? So basically, what does that mean? Well, that means it serves as a check-in for your students' progress in pinpoint areas of development for your students. So really what it is it's a baseline. It's to give them a good idea of what they're good at, and maybe what some of the weaknesses are that they're not so great at. It's also important to know that your colleges will never ever see the PSATs. Okay, so they never ever see the scores. So please make sure also that your students know that, because I think that they get a little bit of anxiety when they start thinking, who's going to see these test results and so forth. It's simply for them, okay? Now, once they take the PSATs, what will happen is they will actually receive their scores. So they'll take them in October. They'll receive their PSAT scores in December. Will be sent home a packet with all of that information. And that's a time when you can review the scores, and you can start asking questions, and then we'll start helping you through the process as a counselor as to which direction is best for you. All right, in terms of the SAT, we recommend that students take the SAT 2 times. All right, and some students will take the exam 3 times. All right, some students get the rounds of testing done in the spring, and others will take one in the spring and the other in the fall. Okay, so it's important to senior year. Yes, so senior year. So remember, each of your children will have different testing strategies as they go through the process, all right? Also, I want to mention too, super scoring. All right, super scoring is a very important thing. Does anybody know what super scoring is? Some of you will, okay? It's a great thing, because what they'll do is they will take the actual best scores from each of your tests, and they'll super score them together, and those are what, which what will be sent to the actual schools. So, okay, as most of you have heard, the SAT will be changing in this upcoming year. So you guys are the lucky ones, okay? So you will be the ones that will be taking the new SAT. So in March of 2016, the SAT will debut the redesigned SAT, which will be a substantial departure from its current form, with each of the sections experiencing consequential makeovers. We have included a description comparison in the packet and all the information that we're going to give out to you at the end of our presentation, so you can actually compare all of these different tests, the old SAT, the brand new redesigned SAT, and also the ACT. Okay? So among the notable changes to the SAT are that math tests that emphasize a narrower but deeper grasp of algebra, de-emphasizes geometry, and puts more questions in real-world context. Also, some notable changes will be the reading, writing, and language tests that require students to cite evidence of their answers, analyze writing, and discern Tier 2 vocabulary definitions from context. Questions and content that better reflect the work of students are undertaking in the best high school courses so that we more aligned with high school curriculum. More specific changes will include a return to the 1,600-point scale and an overhaul of the essay section, including making it optional for your students. Also, there will be the addition of a no calculator math section and rights-only scoring, which means that there will be no penalty for any wrong answers for that test. In addition to the SATs, there's also the ACT. Colleges treat the SAT and the ACT the same. Traditionally, most of our students actually do take the SATs, and if they're disappointed with their SAT scores, then generally they'll go and take the ACTs, okay? ACT is a little bit different, but again, the new redesigned SAT is aligning themselves very similar to the SAT. And the ACT is made up of 5 sections, including math, reading, science, and writing. So, I won't get into all the differences, but the SATs never had science on them. The ACTs had a science section on them. Now, the SATs will have science, but it'll be throughout the whole test in different questions like math and so forth. Now, how do you know what's best for your student? Well, that's a very good question. What we would recommend to you is that your students go and take practice tests, okay? So they will be taking the new PSAT, which will be redesigned for the new SAT tests. So that'll give them an idea at that point what the test is going to be like. And they can also go and take an ACT test. These are all online at College Board, and we'll have that information for you, where they can go take practice tests and really figure out which test is the best for them. However, again, I go back to my earlier statements that you're not in this alone. Once you get your PSAT scores, you will be able to sit down with us as counselors, and we can discuss all of it with you and discuss what's the best, what's the best plan and what's the best for you. Right? In addition to the SAT and ACT, some colleges will require the SAT subject exams. It's important to note that these exams are required only by the most selective colleges. There are exams in a specific content area. For example, some of your kids who are taking honors biology and so forth may be taking those subject tests at the end of this year. Okay? But please keep in mind this is only the most selective colleges. Not every college will need to have the subject tests. Okay? And that you'll have to go to each college and decide how many tests they actually will require and so forth. But that's a lot of information that we can also go. So our advice as a parent, the best thing you can do is keep a balanced approach when it goes to looking at all the different testings, because especially your students are going to get some test anxiety just by thinking about which test is best for them, and you are too, okay? But remember, stay balanced, talk to a lot of different people, talk to us, and figure out, okay, what's the best plan for your child. Also remember, this is the best thing to remember, the fact that testing is important, but remember your transcripts are the most important piece. Your grades are the most important piece that the schools are looking at, okay? Yes, the testing is important, but the transcripts are the most important. Okay, just a few more things for next year they're going to go through. We're coming up to summer, okay, so it's an exciting time, all the kids are getting out. Probably the last thing that your sophomores are thinking about is college, right? So this is a great time, though, to get an early jump start and have them during the summertime, even if it's local colleges, Quinnipiac, Fairfield U, to have them actually go and visit some of the colleges so they can actually see what the college tour is like. And plus what it also does is it gets them excited for next year when they start going through the research stage of looking at colleges and so forth, okay? In October, we'll be holding a financial aid night. It's never too early to start learning about this process, and you guys are welcome to attend. You'll get more information about that as you go through your junior year. Again, October, you'll be taking the PSATs. November, I would wait till November, and then they can actually go and take the ACT practice tests online. But remember, I wouldn't bombard them with any of that until they've taken the PSATs. You don't want them studying for all of these at the same time, even though a lot of the material is the same. Then to kick off the second semester, we'll have a junior parent night to further outline the college process. That will be here, and then you will be meeting in a classroom with all of my students or whoever your counselor is, and we'll go over more in detail about the college process and how it's going to start and what's expected of you and your students and so forth. After this program, we start setting up the individual post-high school planning appointments. So those will start happening in February until generally the end of March. And what we do is we actually will meet with you and your student, and we'll meet in our offices, and we'll go over the college process in even more detail with you. We'll develop a timetable, and we'll also discuss testing strategies of your PSATs, and we'll also build an initial list of colleges for you, and we'll actually talk to your student to start the research stage for them to start looking at colleges. So that's a process that we'll all work on together before the summer hits, so you guys are making sure that you guys have enough colleges and so forth that you're looking at for your senior year. Remember, these appointments are all tailored for each of your students. And I think that's the biggest thing I will say to all of you is the fact that we always say to our students, don't compare yourselves to others, okay? You will get into, or your student will get into the college that's the best fit for them. And I think that's one of the things I saw this year with some of my students is anxiety because, some of the kids were getting to college and they hadn't heard yet and so forth, back and forth. All the kids, my kids so far, have gotten into college and they're doing just fine, okay? So that's a process that we're going through. And remember, your junior year is all about research, all right? And your senior year is all about the application process, okay? So really at this point, all you're going to be doing next year is researching colleges, going through testing and so forth, and then we'll get later on to the next year as their senior year. So I've added a lot of information to you guys. I've thrown a lot of information to you. We're going to give you a lot of information before you leave and so forth, but now I would like to introduce Mrs. Jane Mitchell. Thank you.
Good morning. I get the fun piece of this. So I get to help you think about those college visits. And first of all, I'm going to start with a quote from USC in California. A college is not a trophy, but a match. And I would actually modify that a little more, and I would say several matches. Because we all think that fit is so important for students, and there isn't one best college. There are a group of colleges that are going to be good fits for your students. So, things have changed a lot since you went to college. So what I'm here to talk about are what we call defining college visits. First thing to do before you even start this is you need to let the child know how proud you are of them. They're finishing their sophomore year of high school. They've made it through 2 years of high school. I think it never hurts to give your children pats on the back. And tell them it's okay to be nervous. The next few years, it's fear of the unknown. Reassure them it will work out. So the first of your college visits are to look at the broad categories, as Nick talked about. Students need to see the differences. So even if your child has done some searches, Even if they're beginning to explore individual colleges, they're the second or third child in the family, it's important to look at those broad categories first of all. So you're looking at large versus small, urban versus rural, public versus private. Now, if you're going to do these initial visits as part of your summer vacation, look at the travel distances. Truly, there is nothing worse than a really long car ride at this stage. It's just miserable. So this is why we're recommending that you consider colleges that are closer to New Canaan for these initial visits. For example, Yukon is about 2 hours away.
Or how would I drive?
Cindy and I go on college tours, so it's not that far away. It's a large, it's a public institution, and frankly, it's rural, so it gives a nice, it covers a lot of categories. Fairfield, now that really is close. Small to medium, I would say, private and suburban. Trinity, up in Hartford, a small private college, but definitely in a more urban setting. If you're going to Boston, for example, lucky you have tickets to see the Red Sox. You can look at Boston U, you can look at Northeastern. They're large urban schools. And finally, Nick mentioned Quinnipiac, which is sort of, I think, coming on the radar screen here, which is a medium private school with lots of new building. So there are lots of options. You don't have to fly anywhere at this point, rural categories. So tips for the visits. First of all, as Cindy said, continuum of readiness. Some of your children are dying to do this, others are not. Don't force it upon your children. Eventually they will all be ready. Come up with times that fit the summer plans. I have to be honest, dragging younger siblings may lead to very unhappy family members and unhappy vacations. So think about that a little bit. Suggest that initially your child access the college website and have them call ahead to organize this. Now, you may have to do the first one, you may have to model this for them, or you may have to have them practice with them. They need to find out the times of the tours. I think it's important to try and go on a tour. You can get a flavor of the college. So when you're on the tour, it is really okay not to ask questions. You're just beginning this process. Resist the impulse to stand next to the tour guide and ask lots of questions. Your child will be humiliated. I speak personal experience with my boys and their father. You're not the one who's going, they are. And if your child does have questions at the end of the tour, it's perfectly okay to take the tour guide to one side and ask one-on-one. You can also have the child explore the website. A lot of those questions may be answered that way. Or they can even send an email question to the admissions office. So there are lots of ways around this. So the second thing you can do when you go visit a college is go to an info session. And I think, again, these are very helpful. Try and do at least one of these. That way you get a feeling for what these are all about. Now, you're going to have someone who's going to come out and sell the college to you. That's really their job. And they're going to talk about statistics. They're going to talk about GPAs, and they're going to talk about standardized test scores. Please don't be put off by this. Your child still has the whole of junior year, plus if they're going to do regular decision, it's way too early to talk about earlies, but they also have one semester of senior year. So if they're just getting in gear, if they're just starting to get academically more motivated, reassure them. There's still time. But having said that, do think about them a little bit realistically. Before you go on the visit, you and your child can actually go into Naviance and you can get a sense of how competitive that college will be. That might be a really good kickstart for those students who are just getting to be more academically motivated. Interviews. Do not have your child interview. These are the defining visits, the broad categories. The only caveat I will tell you, I mentioned USC. So if you are planning a visit to California, you're going to Yosemite, and you want to look at schools in the San Francisco area, and it's highly unlikely that you are going to be going back again. In this, listen to all these ifs, and if this happens to be a small school that still interviews. If you want to do it, you can, but I don't think that your students are academically or even emotionally ready for the interviews. I think they're better to be done in the spring of the junior year and even the fall of the senior year. There is one other thing that you can do. If that school is a ways away, most of these colleges that are on a different coast will come to Fairfield County, and they will offer interview sessions at that point. So don't worry, they can always interview later. Most of the colleges will ask a student to fill out a little card. It just gets them on the mailing list. So what's the follow-up with all this? Slow down. When you come out of the college, resist the impulse to immediately start talking. Give your son or daughter time to process the information. If they're ready to talk, let them talk. If they're not, use kind of open-ended questions, maybe a day or two later, you know. Well, what did you think? I wasn't awfully sure about those dining options. Or, you know, boy, those were really pretty nice dorms. So try and give them prompts to help them process and help them think about this. But do resist the impulse to rehash ad nauseum. Your children, it's a long road. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So be judicious with all this. You're just at the beginning. So last but not least, we are so fortunate that the Board of Education supports us in visiting colleges. And during the past 4 years, Sue Carroll put together this map of where we have all been out and about. Unfortunately, you can't quite see how many schools we've visited. We've visited a great deal. But we do travel the United States to meet admissions staff. And we use this not only to gather information for ourselves, but really to publicize the good things that Buchanan High School does. And our admissions reps are incredibly receptive. Oftentimes we meet with the Dean of Admissions because they know that someone from Buchanan is coming. Sometimes we get a personal tour, and sometimes we actually get to go on a tour with parents and students, and that always throws them off because we're asking odd questions to the parents, and they're wondering why there are two somewhat older people there who are walking around without children. So if I can leave you with one last thought, enjoy the time with your child. The days are really precious. These visits can be a lot of fun if you don't do an overwhelming number of them, all compressed. They're starting to become adults, and they're ready to strike out on their own. It really is a wonderful time. So now, last but not least, is Linda, who's going to talk about what your role is in this whole process.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Linda McGann. So we've given you a lot of information, a lot of tools, a lot of resources, and what we hope is helpful in your conversations with your child as you move forward in this process. So while we know it's good to do this jointly together, we do know that it's really important that they start to learn independence in this process. It's sometimes painful for parents to see that timeline. Their time zone is so much different than our time zone, but it's really helpful that they learn to do this themselves so they gain that independence. So when they do graduate, when our seniors now are leaving us, we feel confident that they are ready to go off into the world without their parents and without their school counselors. Too bad we can't go to them. So we're looking for balance. We talked about this before, the counselors, and we want to balance it between your giving support and encouragement, but also parental over-involvement, because we've seen that end too, and that is also, can be detrimental to the students, so we have to find a balance. I saw a very interesting take on it from Middlebury College, and I'm going to paraphrase some of the things that they've said. A few suggestions for parents. So remember that this process is about your child. So your child is now 15, 16 years old. You've been really thinking, I'm sure, about what kind of college they should go to. You know their child. You're thinking about, well, wouldn't it be great? I think it would be great to go here. But they've also been developing their thoughts and concerns, but they probably haven't been sharing it with you. So at some point, that has to come together, and that can be your job to help them bring forth all the things that they've been thinking about. You want to offer support, but not do it in a pressurized way or unsolicited. Bringing the U.S. News and World Report to the dinner table is probably not a good idea where they're trying to eat and you're trying to tell them statistics for the local schools. So you have to meet them. We've talked about this continuum of readiness, where they are on that path. And I think for myself personally, and many of us have children, it's really when they start to say something to you, you can not pounce on them, but offer the help to say, maybe you could do a little research together. What you want to do is, one role that you can do is be a record keeper. There are many, many details to this process, and we will try to keep students online, but it's really very helpful if you start to say to your student, I'm sure you've gotten things from colleges already, if some of them have taken the PSATs, or if they've, next year when they take the PSATs, they're going to be bombarded with not only regular mail, but emails from colleges. You can help them sort that and decide whether or not it should be in electronic form. Perhaps you feel much more comfortable having electronic folders, or maybe you like to, the folder, what do they call those? Expandable folders where you can put all kinds of information, or designate a place in your house where in their room where they put all those things in a bag and you'll look at them later. It's important that it's not spread all over your house. The college process can consume your house. So you might want to designate a space in your house where everything goes into. And there's usernames and passwords for everything. For each college that they apply to, there'll be a portal that they open up, and they'll need a username and password for that. The college board, when they register, they have that. So maybe you can be the keeper of the usernames and passwords. We have found that most students forget their username and passwords. Just with Naviance alone, they're not remembering it. So perhaps you can be the keeper of that. I also felt personally, and I think it works for a lot of students, is to start to designate a day of the week or a time of the week that's really a time when you can discuss college, rather than running out the door at 7 a.m. Did you remember to do this next year? Or what about this? What about this? Just say, for my family, it was always Sunday evenings when we had time and they didn't have practices or club meetings. To say, our college time that we speak about this is going to be Sunday nights at 7 p.m. And kind of stick to that, because then they'll be prepared for that. They'll know next year, well, once a week we're going to talk about this, rather than doing it on a daily basis. There's so much that you're going to be speaking to your children about next year that isn't college related, so you don't want to get lost in all of that too. Several of my colleagues have spoken about how colleges have changed and times have changed. So there's lots of stereotypes about colleges. I really encourage you to speak to all of us about what the current data is. You've seen where we have all traveled and speaking to admissions people, and we spend, in fact it will be shortly, at the end of each year, we as counselors will review all the data of this year's graduating class, their college admissions data. We will look at it and we will also compare it to the information that we've received on the road and speaking to college admissions people. And so we will go forth next year with lots of information that we can share with you during our junior meetings. Okay. I would say early in the process to have a frank discussion with your child about the parameters that you're setting in this college search. Most students have a wide range of things they're looking for. Perhaps I want to go to school in Scotland. Perhaps I want to go to California. It's probably better to have that conversation earlier rather than later about maybe you really only want them to go within a 3 or 4 hour driving radius rather than getting on a plane, what that means to the extra cost, and they'll be taking planes at Thanksgiving when the world is also traveling. So it's probably good to have that conversation. Also a cost situation. We're seeing the price of colleges, private colleges going over $60,000 a year, and that should be really a conversation that you have earlier rather than later about what you feel your family can not just afford, but what is realistic in your family. And having that conversation a little bit earlier is better than fall of senior year. I would say that one of the most important things that we've seen that's difficult for students is disappointment. Disappointment with not getting into a school or not getting a scholarship they wanted. And parents can be very supportive in that role. Students who handle disappointment, and they're all going to get some kind of disappointment, and it's not necessarily about them. It could be a numbers game. Not every school can accept every student. So what we want to encourage parents to do is be realistic about their list of schools. If there are disappointments, help them understand that it isn't necessarily about them themselves. It could be just the schools who are looking for a different type of student. And that's a role I think that's vital, because when parents are supportive of it, we see that students can really handle it much better and move on to the next phase and be much more open to what other possibilities. And sometimes it's the first time in their lives that they're disappointed. And so I think that's an important thing to share with you. Some of these other things I have on the list that my colleagues have spoken about. I think that as our seniors were going out the door for their internship, they were relieved to think that they're back to a high school, to being a high school student. And sometimes in the process, particularly junior year with testing and high-level courses and searching for colleges, they're forgetting to be high school students. So that's a role that you can play, that once in a while you ask them to settle down, or go visit a family member, or do something that is not related to school. It's important that they still are children, and they still are high school students and want to enjoy this wonderful school that we have here in New Canaan. We want them to enjoy their 4 years rather than always thinking so far ahead. So we are here for you very much. I know that I've already had students come to see me about college, but I have many sophomores that aren't even there yet, and we talk about other things. I think it's important that all of your students start to come to see us as school counselors, because the better we know them, the better we can help your family and them service them as far as deciding what is best for them after high school. So, and that, we're going to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, so that was a lot of information. Questions, everyone? Let's start talking about it. What are you thinking about?
I had a question about the percentages of where kids are going. Most of them are going to college. The percentage of gap year was very small, and I'm just wondering, what type of child does a gap year? Gap year is a little bit fuzzy for me, and
Yeah, and those were for last year's class.
Okay.
Okay, so this year, it's a different number, so it'll be slightly different. And I think it's a growing option for a lot of kids. In Europe, it's very typical that many students do a gap year, because in Europe, often they don't know where they're going till like a month before they're going. So a lot of kids, I'm not doing that, I'm going off on a gap year. So it's becoming more common. I think it's good for the student who, I've had students this year, one of which felt, I'm not ready to handle college. And I know that about myself. And so they've chosen to do a year abroad instead, so that they feel more, they're tired, they're exhausted, they feel like they need some time. Many colleges, you'll see, are starting to offer kids admissions January term, that they're going, we'll take you, but not till January. We've seen quite a bit of that this year. So kids are making plans for doing a semester as a gap to go to school somewhere else, or take a job for a while, do an internship for a while. Generally, my sense is that they're tired and they'd like to take some time to do something else. And often, you go through the admissions process in the same way. You get your acceptances, and you decide where you want to go, and then you discuss with that college taking a year off and deferring to the following year. So there's many different reasons. I do have a student who has health issues and is going to defer for a year until she's ready. So anything else that you wanted to say about that? Anyone? Is that okay?
So you can defer for a year and also set for that next year.
Every college has a different policy around that. Some colleges ask for specific, what are you planning to do, where are you going, why are you doing that? Other colleges, it's not an issue at all. So, and they do state that in their websites as to what their policies are around deferring for a year. Most are pretty comfortable with the idea of it.
Okay. And Cindy, there also are gap fairs in the local area that you can go to see all the different, and the range of programs is very, it can be academic, it can be cultural, social, anything, but there are gap fairs.
Don't gap fairs or I say, because we did put it in the guidance of that. It's probably gone for this year. I think they're now sort of like February, March time.
Yeah, in the
Okay.
early
So
spring.
Carol gets information on that.
Okay, everyone use the microphone because we are taping this, so don't just talk quietly. Thank you. Other questions? Sir? Yeah, you.
I've been to a couple of talks where they've said with the new SAT program that they would recommend not taking it the first go round, but taking the ACT.
Mhm.
Is the New Canaan school as a whole recommending more the ACT as well versus the SAT this next year, or?
Yeah, I think we'll know more once the kids can sit for a PSAT and see. I've heard everything from it's much more difficult to it's much more easy. It's much easier, the new SAT. And College Board has only released a limited number of practice tests and limited amount of information, which is frustrating our test prep companies out there, that they don't feel that they can get you ready fast enough. I think for that reason, many are recommending the ACT, and I think it's probably a good option, but not for everyone. I think if your child is a recruited athlete, they may need to have testing earlier, and they may go with the old SAT, but for the most part, we're not recommending that because you don't know how much more you want to take the SAT after it's gone. So prepping for the new one, prepping for ACT are the two. We suggest you take practice tests in either of those and go with which way you want to go. I think in the past the ACT has needed much less prep than the SAT because it's very curriculum based, you know it or you don't. And kids need some practice with timing and making sure that they understand, get some strategies around multiple choice, choosing options. They do recommend you prep for one or the other, don't try to prep for both. But again, I think in the fall you do practice tests on both and make a decision from there. Anyone have other ideas about that? Okay.
Is November the first time you could take the ACT? They would take it, and do you get like a diagnostic on that, like you do
There's practice tests online at any point, and ACT is not making any major changes for next year. So actstudent.org is the company that produces the ACT and administers it. So you can find practice tests there. And there's also the old-fashioned books of practice tests that you can buy and have your child sit in a time setting, and you can score it yourself and get a sense of what that looks like compared to what your PSAT results will be. There are practice SATs of the new SAT out there as well. And I don't know if you've heard that Khan Academy, the online tutoring, is going to be providing free SAT prep as well online. So.
Is there any thought that we might become an ACT testing center also over here?
Yeah, we're looking into it. I've made that proposal to central office. If you could give them a boot, that would be nice to get that decision made. Dr. Lutzy, please tell me what I can do. So yes, we are looking into that. It really is coming down to building use problems in this town right now, and whether we can accommodate test sites come the spring. Probably not in the fall, but we would look to the spring for ACTs.
So the timing cycles are generally fall and spring, but then it is spacing between ACT and SAT. So they were taking both, for instance. How much time is it?
We have the test dates. They're generally a weekend apart, so if SAT is the first weekend of the month, the ACT will be the second weekend of the month. They're always on a Saturday, but we do have the test dates for you. They're generally 3 times, each run them 3 times each in the fall and in the spring, so approximately. There is a test prep company out there recommending you take the test 10 to 15 times. Please don't do that. That's just, I'm so mad at them, so don't do that. If they say that, that's crazy. That's how you just make your thing crazy.
So I know that there are a lot of private test prep companies out there. Does the high school do anything in test prep? Other than tell you to do it online?
The curriculum that we provide, they're in English and math, they're doing a lot of test prep around that. Actually, these tests actually align very well to the new Common Core curriculum, which we are providing to our students. We do provide here at this, these test prep companies are here housed in the school, renting space from us, but we do not support one over the other.
So that would be a conflict of interest. Like, is it necessary to pay a private company to prep your kid?
I think prep is always important, whether you hire a private person to do that or take a course, or if your child is an engaged learner who will do it on their own, they can get the same information. Whether they will do it is the thing. I think that's my thing for test prep companies, is that they force the kids to do it. And even in those situations, if they don't do the homework, they don't improve their scores. So it's a matter of taking that time every week to really plan and prepare. So go ahead. Some other options someone else want to add to that?
What I have found is you can use the PSAT results to determine what kind of test prep to use. So for example, if your child did really, really well in math, you may want to just have a tutor for the English section. Or if it's across the board, scores that need raising across the board, then it would be good to have a test prep company. There are students who do test prep on their own with books. My own son did that after taking a class. His scores did not improve at all. Not at all. And then it finally came to the fall of senior year, and we said, what are we going to do? We've already taken the course. So he sat down 2 hours a day for 2 weeks in the library and went through 2 very, very focused books, and his scores just went way up. So,
Those books are.
excuse me?
The names of those books.
Oh, I prep for the very busy student. Something like that, it's Kaplan.
Okay.
The other one was a math book, and they were, they're not this big. They were just what you need to know. He only had 2 weeks. And I was really impressed. My other son, when he took the PSAT, his math score was okay, but you could see each answer in geometry, he had, his algebra was fine, but geometry, he got half of them wrong. So he went to a tutor just for geometry. And then everything, and that's all he needed. So my other son took 2 courses and never did his homework, so those didn't, they have to do the homework for the classes.
And I just want to mention too, one of the things that I share with my students that I think is extremely helpful is they all have their iPhones and they can go download the apps for questions of the day, especially through SAT. And what that does is it just gives them a question each day, whether they get it right or wrong, it'll explain to them what was wrong. And if they're doing that daily and keeping that fresh in their mind, it helps them versus just all of a sudden studying for big chunks of time. So.
So if we want to see if the ACT might be a good option for our child and we want them to take a practice this summer, would you just do an online one, or would you take them to a place to take it where it would be a more realistic setting?
Yeah, you could do either one. All the test prep companies offer free sittings on Saturdays for various tests, SATs or ACTs, to do practice tests. Of course, it's a marketing ploy on their part, but you can still go, whether you decide to go with them or not. That you don't have to sign up with them, they just offer it. I know, I'm sure Summit does it, but there are a number of other organizations in town that offer that on a Saturday. Westport, C2, yeah, there's a number of different organizations that offer that. So that's a good way to do it. I wouldn't do it a lot, just to give you a sense, to get that barometer of which direction you're going. Okay, the question was around having a young student who is already so stressed about the idea that she's not ready. And that's a great conversation to have around a gap year and with your child's counselor around. Sometimes it's what you'll see over the next 2 years is that confidence grow. I had a student just recently who didn't think he could go to college because he doesn't have the best GPA. And when we sat down and talked about which colleges he could be looking at, it changed him. And he's like, oh, I am okay. I may not be the student that this kid is over here, but there are so many options for me. And his confidence went up like this. And now he's really actively engaged in the process as a junior. And so I think sometimes and especially a lot of times when the children don't feel like they're ready at all, or you can't get them to talk about it at all, once they do set foot on a campus and see how young everyone else looks, or how goofy a lot of people are, they start to realize they'll fit in somewhere. And so, it will be, again, different for every child. So I think that's a family decision if you're going to take some time away. But I think a lot of it is fear. And once they start the process, they realize. And that decision of taking a gap year, you could apply to college and apply for gap year, and apply for PG years, and make that decision in senior year, and see where they're at. They grow a lot in the next couple of years. Question?
I'm wondering how summer college tours or during college session, especially if the child knows that it's in college, do you recommend that wait until college is done, or in the summer college tours?
The question is around touring in the summer versus waiting till the kids are in session. Go ahead, Jen.
think summer tours are actually quite beneficial.
Louder,
because
sing. Yeah, speaking.
Although you will not see all students on campus, you will definitely see some, and they won't be the students who are there remedially. They will be probably the students who are doing research with professors. But generally, those tours have less people, so your child has much more ability to interact with the tour guide. You're one of 10 instead of one of 75. And what it comes down to is when we get to the start of senior year, if your child has fallen in love with a school that offers an early decision, and you only saw it in the summer, then that you would go back and see with the students on campus. But if your child is doing a regular decision or an early action, they have time to go back and see the school if they get in through admitted student days. And actually, admitted student days are the best because your child can go, they have the offer, they can ask all those questions they were afraid to ask before. So I wouldn't shy away from the idea of those summer tours. The kids are less stressed, they're not worried about coming back and catching up on a project or a big math test that's coming up. You tend to be a little bit more relaxed, and you can always go back again.
Why did they switch the PSAT from Saturday to an in-school Wednesday?
That's College Board's decision. They're not offering it on Saturday next year. They're only offering it on Wednesday, so every school in the country will be taking the test on that day. Yeah. So, yeah, that is, we're looking at developing programs for the other students in the school around that, and offering and planning a morning that's going to be primarily PSAT testing for sophomores and juniors, and then other things for the other students. So it is something in the works, but there is no other option for next year. You'll get emails on the directions around registration for the PSAT. It's all in discussion, again, with central office, and decision's not made yet, so.
How can students become aware of scholarships that are offered through the school for that?
Questions about scholarships? Anybody want to go for that? I don't want to hog it.
Sure. In Naviance, there's a whole scholarship section that you go to, and it can give, those tend to be a little bit more national in that, but Sukero also posts things to her own, the College and Career website, and Naviance, there's lots of information about local scholarships too. And we will always alert students and parents to local scholarships also.
And we also have an Kid in High School Scholarship Foundation. Not sure if you saw the signs and the advertisements up about 3 weeks ago. I mean, they had somebody knocking on your door. And students apply to that. I believe the deadline is April of their senior year. So that's a lot of time to plan in advance. And there's also other websites out there that we recommend is fastweb.com, I believe it is. It's a free search engine where you could type in, yes, okay, I have an uncle who's a firefighter, lots of variables that you could put in, and then they'll give you a whole list of scholarships that your son or daughter may apply to. They take time, oftentimes there are essays, but there's a lot of money out there, and it's such a shame. A lot of kids don't do the research and explore and apply, and there's so much money that goes unused. And any of those online websites that I just talked about, or fastweb.com, if they say that there's a fee, that's a scan and move on to the next. These are all free resources and search engines.
Questions?
Well, one thing that I noticed with the national scholarships, to look at it junior year instead of senior year, because a lot of them take a lot of time to go through the application and the essays. And the deadlines are often more like summer of between junior and senior year. Whereas the local scholarships are more during the senior year. So if you're looking at national scholarships, look at it next year.
One last thing, when your child is ready, we're not at that stage now, but when we're looking at building the list and we're looking at schools, that your child has a likely, in other words, they're likely to be admitted. Those are going to be the schools where your child is sort of at the top of the applicant pool, and they may qualify for merit money, free money, not loan money. So it's very important, put this in the back of your heads, that as you're looking at these likely schools, think in terms of, gosh, my child might get some money here. This will be really helpful.
Yes, and I had a student this year, full ride at that school versus paying for it and I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to graduate school anyway. So it's all part of the bigger discussion when that happens. So it's nice options at that point. Other questions?
I have a daughter who's extremely academic, graduated from Stanford. And hers since she was tiny, because she just academically, you know, compare your kid compares herself
Yeah.
to her sister. And I just never know what to say. Everybody's different, it's gonna be fine, but I think that added pressure is just, that's another thing that's making it difficult on top of her age.
Right,
I
right.
don't know what to say to her about that.
Again, I think as she goes through the process and it becomes her own, she'll understand that. And in the same way, college is as competitive as a place like Stanford, it only becomes more competitive. So there's a good chance your stepsister wouldn't have gotten in now, so.
Well, even she says that.
Yeah, so I think, that's all part of that process. And they start to understand who they are and where they fit in, and it really has nothing to do with how competitive of a school you can get into. It's about what's best. And, you see it all the time, the kids who go to a lesser-known school or less competitive school, that they're the ones that rise to the top and move forward. Frank Bruni wrote a great article on that recently. He has a book out around this that, I forget what the name of his book, Frank Bruni, he just wrote it, he's promoting it all over the place. And it really goes to that, give her that book to read and maybe she'll feel better about things. Any other questions? Thank you very much, it's been very good. There are handouts, and please sign in